Hi everybody, I'm James Moss, a global water industry recruiter and director at Vertiera, and the founder of the Water Workforce podcast, where we discuss everything in terms of best practices to accelerate your career in the water industry. Today I'm joined by James Swantek, who is an enterprise account executive at Kamstrup, with past experience at Mueller and Seven Seas as well, and he has a background in chemical engineering. James, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Excited to
Yeah.
discuss the topics.
No problem. How was that for an intro? Anything else you want to
add? No, that's well, I've been in the water industry for just about 10 years now. So
Fantastic. So off screen, just before I hit record, we were talking about certain topics of interest in terms of skills maybe people should have for the water industry. I think we both touched on how there is a definite big amount of people who are going to be retiring over the next 10, 20 years in the water industry. So we need to find those people to join. And so we briefly spoke about what specific skills you think will be in high demand over the next 5, 10 years. So do you want to touch on that for me, first of all?
yeah, I think the first skill that's really going to be in high demand is finance. It's actually the first skill gap that I recognized in myself and had to go out and fix. I didn't learn it in school, and it became very apparent that the world runs on money, and we're going to have a $1.2 trillion funding gap in the water industry between what's needed and what we have in order to just maintain infrastructure, and that's without innovating. And so it's going to become incredibly more important to communicate to external stakeholders knowledgeably about the finance of a project in order to get funding for such projects, in order to get approval from the public, and then also for your internal stakeholders in order to get project approval, in order to get projects prioritized. And so being able to speak knowledgeably about the finance that drives a project to be helpful for the community is going to be incredibly important in the next 5 to 10 years. And that goes hand in hand with the next skill, which is communication. And we have a public perception problem in the water industry that was created intentionally. In hindsight, not the best idea. The water industry has kind of been the unsung heroes. It was almost intentional. Like, we want to get in and do the job and not be seen and just help the community have water. But then the public thinks that water is magic. You turn on the tap and it's there, and they take it for granted. And so we're going to need to have good communication skills in order to bridge that gap, so the public sees the importance of what people who work in the water industry are doing and can help support new projects in the water industry, funding with the government. So communication with the public is going to be incredibly important in the next 5 to 10 years. Artificial intelligence, that's a buzzword right now. Everybody wants to have it. Most people don't actually know how to use it. But there are new technologies in the water industry that are utilizing artificial intelligence in order to take the data and make more actionable decisions. And that can be really important for efficiencies in the water space. And since we have a shrinking workforce, technology and efficiency is going to be more important than ever in order for us to adapt and continue to be successful doing what we've been doing for 100 years with less people, right? And the last skill that I think will really be important for the next 5 to 10 years is just mobility, the ability to work on the go. If all you know how to use your phone for is death scrolling through social media, you're gonna be behind the times, because the technology that we have today allows us to minimize disruptions in the workflow when you're in the field, and it's only becoming more and more useful and more necessary to use technology in the field. If you can't do your entire job off your phone, if you're reliant on going back to a computer, it's gonna hurt you in the water industry in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I'd like to touch on a couple of those actually. So, particularly finance and AI. If someone's coming into the water industry, doesn't have much knowledge on finance, maybe their only AI exposure is ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. How do you think someone can develop those skills then? So particularly finance, I think that's an interesting point. If someone doesn't have a finance background at all, how do you think they can? I mean, how did you do it? How did you develop your knowledge in finance?
So I had a mentor who taught me most of what I know in finance, and then I went back to school. I got a certificate through Coursera from Wharton on
Mhm.
financial modeling, and then I went back and got my MBA in strategic leadership. So I've pursued education specifically related to this because I've seen the value of it and being able to communicate to customers and to uh, banks and whatnot about the importance of the project from a finance standpoint and the return on investment. I think if you want to learn more about finance, I think starting with just a basic finance course, which you can get online, um, you might even be able to get it from like LinkedIn Learning for free. Like it does, you don't have to pay for it. It doesn't have to be formal, but you have to understand it and be able to speak eloquently
Yeah.
about it. And then mentorship is a great path. I do think in the water industry we need more formalized mentorship programs, and I think this is one of those ones where in the water space, people don't realize it, but we need all types of talent. Like the
Mhm.
water space doesn't just exist with engineers out in the field turning valves, right? We have finance people and we have HR people. And you have to not be afraid to talk across departments. So I learned a lot of what I know about finance just by sitting in the finance director's office and talking with him about a project, or talking with the tax person or our treasurer, and just taking the opportunity to listen to other people talk about what they're passionate about, which still helps the water industry through their role.
Mhm. A good point. It's funny. I see obviously a lot of people who come into the water industry who, like you said, seem to just be engineers, but we need a lot of people who have a strong finance background and other as well. I see a lot of people who have a lifelong finance or legal career, for example, and then come into the water industry in maybe a VP or C-level position. Might not even be a finance or a legal role, but they've had that different background, brought it over. And yeah, like you said, they don't have that typical engineering background, but they can offer these different skills. What about AI then? Have you done anything in terms of that?
Yeah, I use
Yeah.
AI a lot, not from a water technology standpoint. Obviously, there's machine learning in the technologies. Even in Camship's technology where I work, we use machine learning. But from a personal career development standpoint, I used AI for a lot of things. And the thing about AI is learning how to ask it questions and
Mhm.
then having the know-how to just question what it tells you. Don't take it for what it is, right? It is an iterative process. AI by nature is an iterative process. So the more you work with it, the better it gets. And so you have to be willing to have it give you wrong information and go back and fix the wrong information, and then communicate it in a way that makes sense. But it's really useful for efficiency purposes.
Mhm. Perfect. Um, you said mobility as well. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, uh, the phones can do so much, and everything. When you talk about a new technology, everything is moving to the phone, right? Everything's an
Mhm.
app. There's an app for that, right? And we used to have in the water space all these handheld devices, and those have they're pretty much going away. Nobody wants to support them because you could do the same thing on a phone, and the phone has actually more capability because Bluetooth and induction charging have just become so much more standard than they were before. So you can just do most things from a phone, and you can take notes in the field, you can do work orders in the field. If you have to wait to get back to your office to go on a computer and log what you did in the field,
Mhm.
there's memory issues, right? There's human error, and who knows when it'll be. Sometimes you go out in the field in the first thing in the morning, and one thing leads to another, and you're not back in your office until the afternoon. For me, I work on the vendor side, so I'm not usually out in the field like that as much. But I might be on a plane first thing in the morning, and might not get back to my hotel room, until 8 or 10 o'clock at night, and that is not a good time to be working on the computer trying to remember what I did all day since 8 in
Mhm.
the morning. And so it's just going to be incredibly important for being flexible and being able to do things on the go to kind of fill that gap that we have.
Yeah. So those seamless digital technologies really that work alongside you whilst you're doing the job. And you're saying that people really need to learn those skills as early as possible, well, to make sure they do the best job possible.
To embrace them, because they're all going to change, right? I mean, we have an entire virtual reality space coming on the horizon, and if you can't live in augmented reality, you're really going to have a problem when we get to virtual reality. But people are doing it today. I've been in city planners' offices where they have an Oculus in the room, and they use it for virtual tours. They use it for training. So the virtual space is coming. It's even coming to the water industry. And so you got to really be good with the augmented space to really advance in your career.
Perfect. James, I reached out to you after I saw you do a post at the YP Summit. I thought it was a really great video. It was a Young Professional Summit. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you were, how important do you think it is for, young professionals in the water sector, particularly, who maybe want to get that exposure? What role do you think, events, conferences, networking, what do you think these play in recruitment for the water sector and, getting young talent exposure to the water sector?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So every job that I've ever had in the water space has come from my network.
Wow.
Right? And there's no better place to build your network than at conferences and events. And so the water industry itself is actually small, and it's kind of shrinking, sadly. But when you go to a conference or event, everybody knows everybody. You've either worked for or worked with or worked, competed against pretty much everybody that you see at the event. You know them in some way, or they know of you, or they've seen you before. And that shouldn't be a deterrent for people who are looking to get into the industry. It's actually really great because most people in the water industry are very welcoming. As long as you share a passion for water and what we do, and, go about networking the right way, where you actually make a connection with somebody and talk with them, and don't go in and sell them a sales pitch on the first day or even in the first month. Actually build a network and try to help them. And what you put out into the water industry, you get back. If you help people, people will help you. And everybody in the water industry really likes alcohol. We have a whole saying about it. No water, no beer. No water, no wine. No water, no whiskey. We like to drink. So you can do most of your networking at a bar. So it's really, really easy to get involved, but you got to come to the events. And that's where you'll find most of us.
Fantastic. What are some of the most popular, or what's some of your favorite events, conferences that you've been to in the water sector?
I really like the national events. I think they're incredibly important. It's a big obstacle, I think, for young people to make that decision to go to a national conference. And it was really great this year at the YP Summit. I saw some people who were there on their own. They got their company to give them permission to take the time off, but they paid their own way to get all the way to Dallas and to be at the conference. And I would venture a guess that they really, really got their money's worth, right, by going there. Now, regional conferences are also really good. State conferences. Every state has, or maybe sometimes two states together will combine, but most states have their own water conference. They have two: a rural water conference and an AWWA type conference. And those conferences are just like the big conference at a local level. And so you can build your network locally and never go to a national conference and be very successful in the water industry and have lots of connections and lifelong friends and make an impact in your local community. If you want to have a bigger impact and really, really grow in your role in the water industry, you've got to go national. There's just so much to learn at these big conferences, and not just in the shows, but not just in like the technical sessions, but just being there and talking to people. I mean, I can tell you every drink that I had at UMC in Dallas, I learned something new from someone new that I was talking to. People are so passionate about this space that's all they want to do is talk about it, and so you can learn so much just by talking to people. And so I really encourage people to get out to the national shows at some point in their career, but don't let that deter you. You can get a lot out of the regional shows.
You touched on it already briefly. You said the water industry is shrinking, and we spoke about it briefly as well before the call about how quite a lot of water professionals are retiring, and maybe we're not getting enough new talent into the sector. So what do you think water companies can actually do to, well, make sure that we have a smooth transition when so many people are retiring, and maybe not enough people are coming into the water sector? What can companies do?
So I think technology is key. I think the water industry is adopting more and more technology, and it's out of necessity because with less people, we're going to need the technology. But it's also key for the transition of knowledge because back in the old days, there was one guy at the utility who knew where all the pipes were in his head. And you can't record that for the next generation if you don't have a means to record that. Like modern technology, like GIS, where you can actually show the pipes and everything on a map. And so adopting new technology and being willing to work with technology is going to be important in order for us to pass on that knowledge. And then I think we really need formalized mentorship and apprenticeship programs. I heard the question a lot at the YP Summit this year. How do I get a mentor? That was asked of several of the speakers. Young people want to be mentored. They want to learn. I don't think it should be a big mystery. I think we should have formal mentorship programs. I've seen them work. I've had a lot of success in deploying mentorship programs where it just gets a lot of involvement and it keeps people engaged. If you're a water industry professional who's willing to mentor someone, I don't know why we can't just say that. I'm willing to mentor someone. Give me a mentor. Why do the young people have to go out and try to find a mentor? We know that we're in a time where the transition of knowledge has never been more important in the water industry. So why are we not formalizing the way that we transition that knowledge and helping the next generation take on those challenges?
Completely agree. I think the technology thing is such a good point as well. I think now that we have the ability to do it, and so many people are retiring, why not take advantage of technology, make sure that all these skills, all this knowledge can be actually passed on, not just in person, as much as it's good to do it in person, like you said, through a mentor, actually having technology pass on these skills when so many people retire is such a good point for sure. Fantastic. I think that's most of what I wanted to cover today, unless you had any final points you wanted to make.
I just think we as an industry, we have to get better about attracting talent into the industry, right? We have something that a lot of other industries don't have, and that is the ability to make an impact on society. Now, everybody makes an impact in society in some way, but our impact is really visible. We've gone unseen as an industry, but we need to make ourselves visible because we are making a visible impact that potential candidates can see and want to do. They want to have an impact, so it can help bring more candidates into the water industry, which I think is incredibly important at this particular time in history.
What would be your top piece of advice for companies or just professionals to make yourself as visible as possible?
I think you got to use modern technology. I think you got to use things like social media. I think the whole world is running off videos right now. If you're not making videos, start making videos, learn how to make videos, and then tailor your message to each demographic. One video does not fit all, right? You want to recruit more finance people, make a video that targets finance people. You want to recruit more HR people, make a video that targets HR people. You, for some reason, want to recruit more engineers, we got plenty of those. Make a video that targets engineers, right? You got to tailor your message and you got to be sincere, but I think showing the ability to have an impact, doesn't matter what your role is in the water industry, you're contributing to a greater impact. It's like the janitor at NASA says, what do you do? I help us get to the moon, right? everybody in the water industry is helping have that impact that we have in the water industry. So whatever role that you have or you want to do, you could do it in the water industry. We just got to make more people aware of that.
Fantastic. I think the video point is a perfect final one for me, just doing this video with you. So that's fantastic. James, thanks so much. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you for reaching out. Glad to participate.